I'd like to welcome our guest today on the Mindful Practice podcast show. She's a local lady from Paarl. Her name is Marionette Maar. Marionette, welcome to the podcast, and I'm very excited to get to know you better.
Thank you very much, Bronwyn. Thank you for the opportunity.
Could you give the listeners a feel of what it is that you do professionally?
I am a school principal of a primary school in Ravensmead. I am a teacher for 37 years. I started teaching in 1990, became a departmental head in 2005, became a deputy principal in 2020, and then I was appointed as principal in 2024.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so a teacher all your life.
Yes.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Where did it all start for you? Where did you grow up? Fill us in on your childhood years, your family, etc.
I was born in a little town called Villiersdorp. My father was a teacher there at Kwesi de Wet Primary School. And then he became the principal of Dal Josephat Primary School. So we had to move to the Paarl region. We stayed in a small town called Newton. That's between Paarl and Wellington.
Yes.
He was the principal there for, I think, something like 20 or 22 years. That was also the school that I started my schooling. So I went there from grade 1 to grade 6. Those years it was sub A to standard 4.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Paarl, and then I became a learner at Ebenezer Primary School, where I did my grade 7 and my grade 8 years. And then I went to Klein Nederburg Junior Secondary. So I did my grade 9 years there, and then grade 10 to 12, I went to Noorderpaal High School.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And your brothers, sisters, family?
Yes, I've got 2 brothers. I've lost my one brother about 30 years ago in an accident. So at the moment, it's just my older brother and I. And then I also have 4 nieces and nephews.
Okay.
And then my little godson called Alex.
All right. And no children of your own?
No, I don't have any children of my own. Only the 4-legged kind.
Yes, and you're the auntie of note. And of course, the
Yes.
mother of many, many other children at your school, I would think.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So you alluded to your career in the education sector, and fill us in a little bit more about where you've been, where you've taught.
I started my studies at Stellenbosch University. I did my honors in music, and then I started my teaching career in 1990. And I am at the same school now that I am the school principal. I started, that is my first school, but that is my only school. So I was a music teacher at first, and I absolutely loved it. I had a double career for 16 years. I was also an orchestral musician. I play the piano and then also the violin and the viola.
Oh, wow. Stunning.
My viola playing actually took me all around the country. I did ad hoc work for quite a number of orchestras, Cape Town Symphony Orchestra. Yes. I worked with the Cape Philharmonic Orchestra. I was an ad hoc player for the Eastern Cape Philharmonic Orchestra, KwaZulu-Natal, and then also the National Chamber Orchestra in Mabatu. I was all over the country, always on a plane somewhere. And I absolutely loved it.
Not a lot of people know what that instrument looks like. Can you describe it to us, please?
Yes, the viola is the bigger brother of the violin, and it has a deeper sound. Your strings differ.
Is it the same position as a violin?
The same as yes, the same as a violin.
So like that. Okay.
Yeah, it just has a deeper sound, and it looks a little bit bigger. Now, when you play the viola, it's like you sit in the middle of the orchestra.
One of my friends is an opera singer, and she once sent me a clip of watching an orchestra and looking at those instrument players in the orchestra, the amount of discipline and the amount of teamwork. I don't think a lot of people really realize what that takes to play in an orchestra. Can you fill us in a little bit?
Yes, you have to be extremely disciplined when you play a musical instrument because you have to practice a lot in order to master your instrument and also to master the music that you are studying. So it doesn't come naturally or automatically.
Overnight.
You have to, yeah, not overnight, yes. And as you grow older and as you progress, your music becomes more difficult. When we were students, the minimum time that you have to practice was 2 hours. So anything between 2 and 4 hours. Your professional musicians, they practice anything from 7 to 8 hours.
Is that per day?
Per day, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
yeah, we played quite a variety of repertoire also. So I think that is the most rewarding part. And then also, when you listen to music as a musician, you always listen to it from the inside out instead of the outside in.
Yeah.
Because many times when I listen to music that I played as an orchestral musician, I listen for the viola part because that is something that I loved, and that is the part that I played.
Yes.
But then also when you are inside an orchestra, you also have to listen to other musicians and to other instruments as well. Because many times you play certain sections with them. So listening is extremely important. It's not just the discipline of practicing, but listening. Your listening skills are extremely important because you need to listen not only at your own instrument, but you also have to listen to everybody else around you. And then obviously you have to follow the conductor.
Exactly. I was just going to say, and watch the conductor.
Yes.
Wow. So if I have to ask you the question, what have you learned in music that you applied in your teaching?
The structure that you use in music, you also use in your teaching. Listening skills also very important. The discipline, because discipline becomes the basis and the fundamentals of everything. Breaking it down, because breaking down certain things in smaller components to make it easier for your learners to understand. So it's very, very close to what you are doing in teaching as well, because you cannot really separate the one from the other. And this might sound very strange for people if you don't know it, but also your posture. If, say for instance, if I sit down, I cannot slouch because that is something that I've never learned in my music days. Yeah. You always have to sit up straight, especially when you play the piano, especially when you play the violin in an orchestra. Your posture is extremely important. So I'm always upright. When I walk also, I walk upright. There's no slouching. If I slouch, then it's when I sit in front of the TV and I watch something.
Wow, that's so amazing. And of course, the way your brain is wired as a musician, or someone that plays a musical instrument, it's your thinking is affected. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, the way you think, very, very, very much so. And then also because you are involved in such a lot of aspects of music, it really teaches you to multitask because you have to do quite a lot of things at once. And that is something that I apply in my work as well. I'm very good at multitasking. While I am writing something, I can listen to somebody because that is just a skill that has been practiced for many, many years.
And what is your other hobbies and passions that comes along with music, perhaps?
I love running. I'm an avid runner. I love taking walks with my neighbor as well. When I was younger, I used to train my dogs to run with me. So I had 2 dogs that I trained specifically to run with me, so that they listen to you, they listen to your commands, so they are not focused on other people, though they are focused on you. And I could tell them, okay, we're going to walk now, and then I just say walk, and then he stops, and then he starts walking. And for instance, when I say, let's go, and then he starts running again.
To me, is another example of discipline.
Yes, absolutely.
It's all interlinked.
So everything started in my music career. With running, you also have to be disciplined, especially when you have to train for races. You have to be very focused, and you have to be goal-orientated, and you have to be goal-driven. And those are things that started at my music career.
That is so interesting, very fascinating. I want to switch the conversation back to your career as a teacher. That started out as a teacher, now as a principal. I know that there are many challenges, and I have such a soft spot for educators. Can you talk about what are, in your experience, what are the top three main challenges?
For me, discipline, definitely. Your children are changing, your children's environment are changing because your parents get younger. And many times with the young parents, we find that they don't have the parenting skills and they expect you as a teacher and you as a principal to instill that in kids. But what they don't understand is that it's a partnership between the parent, the home, and the school. So that the parent plays such a pivotal role. Not what I always compare it to is a triangle. Your child is at the top, your parent is on the one angle at the bottom, and the teacher is on the other angle at the bottom. And then the closer the teacher and the parent work together, that is more beneficial to your learner. But if as soon as one of the two is out of sync, then that is where the problem starts. So I would say that the involvement of parents, not many parents are involved with their children, but then sometimes, and this might sound strange, the over-involvement of parents as well, that can also cause a problem.
Wow.
So and as a principal, you have to manage quite a lot of people. You have to manage the learners, you have to manage the staff, you have to manage parents, you have to manage the community, you have to you liaise with district officials, you liaise with everybody. It can become very stressful at times, but that comes with a job.
Yeah. And you touched on that, and I want to explore that a little bit more because there are many principals that feels the same. I did a podcast series a couple of years ago with 9 principals in Paarl, and there was a lot of synergies that came out of that. We were all saying similar things. What is your advice for younger teachers in the system that have to deal with so much responsibility and weight, in the role?
Yeah, obviously the fact that you have to work hard, that you need to know your subject, obviously. You need to prepare, but then I think very important, you need to partner with an older teacher, because I always feel that your younger teacher and your older teacher can learn from each other. Many times I learn from younger teachers, and I am in teaching for 37 years, but I also use my expertise to work with younger teachers, not only in my own school, but I am also involved with the facilitation of teachers. So working with teachers and
in a mentorship capacity.
Yes. And this is one of the things that I told my sister-in-law when she went into teaching, and she went into teaching, I think was when she was in her late 30s, early 40s. And one year I gave her a diary as a Christmas present, and she was like, why do I get a diary? And I said to her, you are starting your teaching career. When your kids leave at the end of the day, you write in the diary what went well, and then what went wrong, and what is it that I need to change. And you keep that diary, so you keep a log of your whole year. And then you keep that diary, and then when you get your second class next year, you go back to your diary, and then you see, okay, what went well, you work with that. What went wrong, you need to change it. What is it that I can change? That is the things that you can change, and that you need to perfect. So and you really find your feet the 3rd or the 4th year of teaching. And I always tell the teachers at the beginning of the year, when I was doing the induction program, I always tell them, Make the mistakes in your first year, learn from your mistakes, but find a teacher on the staff that you can work with that can be your mentor teacher, because I am your mentor teacher in a different capacity. But when you have a mentor teacher in your field, then it's very, very beneficial, because there's a lot of things that you need to learn. You need to learn how to manage your classroom, how to set a question paper, the marking, the moderation, and everything. So mentors at school have different roles. So I usually mentored them as far as management things were concerned, like handing in marks and what does your books need to look like, your file need to look like, where your mentor teacher are going to be involved in the subject as well. Be open to learning, because I think that is extremely important. You do a lot of research. You speak to teachers outside of the school as well. I liaise with a lot of teachers outside of school, not only in my community, but also teachers in other provinces, teachers overseas. So it is important that you have a network, not only in your school, but in your community and maybe in your hometown, because there are teachers everywhere.
Wow, you can talk about teaching forever, right? You can see it's your passion. Could you
Yes,
highlight
absolutely.
one of your biggest life lessons, sort of as a parting message?
I would say, Bronwyn, that I think the lessons that I have learned was when I had a complete breakdown. I was hospitalized. I was completely burnt out. And that is where I realized that you have to look after yourself. You have to look after your emotional health. You have to look after your mental health. You have to look after your physical health, because at some stage, I didn't only manage people at school, I also had to manage people at home, because my father fell ill. My father was diagnosed with vascular dementia in 2014. And that for me was a role that was extremely difficult to fulfill, because I was his daughter, I was his caregiver, I was everything at home, and the burden that I had to carry, it just became too much. I fell ill, and my doctor actually said to me when I was hospitalized, she said to me, "You never realize how ill you were." Because I just carried on and I just carried on. And because of the added responsibility, I ignored the warning signs.
That's right.
And there were many, many warning signs that I just ignored, because you are so overwhelmed with responsibility at school, responsibility at home. At some stage, I had to manage everything. I had to manage the school. I had to manage everybody's finances at home. I had to manage the caregivers, because at some stage we had caregivers 24/7. So all the added responsibilities were just put onto my shoulder. I feel the added responsibility because it's your parents that you have to care for. And at some stage, it just became too much. And when I was in hospital, it was not an easy road, because I was diagnosed with depression. I had a complete breakdown, and the breakdown was actually at home. And that year I was actually studying also. So my sister-in-law and her daughter usually, or my brother sometimes, usually came to stay with my parents in my absence, so that I can go to class. And when it happened, the day before it happened, my father was actually hospitalized, and I was at the hospital, and my sister-in-law and her daughter, she left around about 5:30, and they got home. They have to travel to Saldanha. They got home around about 7:30, 8:30.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I phoned my brother and I said, "Listen, yeah, this is what happened." And then my sister-in-law said, she called me back and she said, "Bridget and I will be coming back." And I said to her, "But you just got home." And she said, "It doesn't matter. We will be coming back." And I got home around about 10:15, and they got here around about 10:30, and we all went to bed. And that specific morning, I woke up with a splitting headache. and I needed to take pain medication, but I couldn't take pain medication on an empty stomach. So I made myself something to eat, and I was sitting in my living room, and all of a sudden, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And that is how they found me. And yeah, they put the ball in motion. They made a doctor's appointment, took me to the doctor.
So
The
your
doctor
body
booked me
literally
off.
shut down?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, literally shut down. And that was extremely scary. And you know, looking back at it in retrospect, the warning signs were there. I just ignored the warning signs. And you just shouldered on because there's such a lot of responsibility. My father at some stage couldn't take care of himself anymore. He needed help just to go to the bathroom. He needed help just to walk around because he couldn't do things on his own anymore. So we had to get a carer to take care of him. But at night, then my mother and I had to take care of him. So that took its toll because I didn't sleep.
Tired,
I slept for...
Yeah.
Yeah, I was extremely tired. I was fatigued. I slept for 4 hours a night, and that was broken sleep. You don't sleep through.
It's not sustainable, you know, and I guess now your view on life and how you manage your mental health, how you manage your physical health, it was a complete turnaround now, right? I would think your awareness about balance and managing that is very sharp now.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that still resonates with me, when my sister-in-law came in and she actually burst out crying, and she said to me, you know, we always took care of dad and mom, but we forgot about you.
That's right.
Because yeah, it was, and for me that was very, very profound, and I think that was the turnaround also. But then when I went back to the doctor, he said to me, I want you on a plane somewhere. I don't want you in the Western Cape. I want you on a plane somewhere. And he actually forced me to go on holiday in the middle of the term. And I phoned a friend of mine in Durban, an orthopedic surgeon, and I asked him, is it possible that I can just stay with you for a few days? And he said, yes, by all means. But then also his mother fell ill, and he had to go to Bloemfontein to bring her to Durban. So he said, oh, I'm going to put you into a hotel at my expense. So I stayed at an hotel in Umhlanga, and I went running on the beach and I explored.
Fantastic.
And later on, yeah, I moved to Durban North. I ran on the promenade. I put myself on a red bus. I went to Ushaka, and I toured all through Durban.
You've touched on your healing journey, so to speak, and the fact that you've gone to Durban and you were literally in a different location. Talk again in summary, what was the steps that you took in that different environment where you started to heal yourself?
It didn't come overnight. It was a journey of 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was hospitalized. I worked with an holistic team, with occupational therapist. We worked with a psychiatrist, with a therapist, with a biokineticist, and they put things in place for me to help me on my journey. Besides the fact that I was on medication, we also used exercise, and that is where I worked with my personal trainer. And we used exercise to get out of depression. Although I was on medication, I think that was one of the key aspects of my healing journey, but also to put boundaries in place, because the boundaries, when you care for somebody, the boundaries can get blurred. The most important part is listening to my body, resting when I am tired, and when I feel that I am a little bit overwhelmed, to just pause a bit, to breathe, take everything that I have learned into consideration.
Makes me very excited because I teach this to others, how to avoid burnout. So I want to spend a little bit more time for you to very clearly state what were the warning signs that you ignored.
Complete fatigue. You are demotivated. At some stage, you just don't care. Your body tells you something is wrong. I contracted severe headaches. My thinking was all over the place. It was scattered. My memory became very, very dodgy. My concentration was impaired. And those are the things that were there, but I never really took note of it.
Never paused and asked yourself that this is not normal, you know?
No,
Yeah.
no. And I just continued because the fatigue, I thought, okay, it was because I didn't sleep. I had an irregular sleeping pattern. I had insomnia at some stage. And when I was in hospital, I was actually diagnosed with an underactive thyroid. And yeah, that put a lot of things into perspective, the fatigue that was there, because it was just the fatigue that I couldn't shake. And when I went on medication for that, that started to clear.
Sleep is a huge thing, eh? It's underrated because a lot of your healing happens while you sleep. And if you don't get that 8 hours, it shows up in how the brain is functioning, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that my psychiatrist actually told me is that I was physically fit. I'm a runner. I had an exercise regime, and even I got sick because the psyche in people, yeah, it controls everything. It controls it controls your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health. And if that is being broken down, that is when the body breaks down. And that is what happened to me.
Exactly. Yeah. So I always say there's 4 compartments to a successful life. It's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. If one of those are neglected, or more than one of those, then the chain is broken, you know, and then it needs to be fixed. But you look good. Where are you now in your journey?
I can truly tell you that I am happy. Because I say you need to find happiness within yourself. I am, besides the fact that I have an underactive thyroid that has to be controlled with medication. I'm physically fit. I'm physically healthy. I don't have the memory lapses and I don't have the concentration problems anymore. I can sit for a very, very long time with something. I am driven. I am goal orientated. I go for what I want.
It's like the appetite for life came back.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that I built into my regime and into my life, is to take breaks regularly. When I get a diary at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, I draw lines through weekends randomly. And those are the times that I take my breaks. I go on holidays fairly regularly. I don't bring work home anymore. I do my work at school. I try to complete things at school because here at home I just want to relax. Yeah, go for my walk. Work in the garden, play with the dog, go for walks with my neighbor. Yeah, go on hikes. Yeah, that kind of thing.
This is such a powerful story of how you've turned your life around, and now you are an example to so many, particularly as a principal in your role, but also as a woman. You know, so many women struggle to find the balance, you know, and that is really such a deep passion of mine, that you need to find that. You know, sometimes there's sprints of hard work and then you put in the hours, you do whatever you need to do, but that has to follow with a quiet time, like the time you block out and you just do something completely opposite where you relax. If you can find the rhythm in your life in that, then you're more successful rather than going for long stretches, ignoring every red signal, and then you crash. You know, then it takes, you said it took you 2 years to recover. Then the recovery is longer. But if you can manage it, you know, with small intervals and being more conscious of it, which is what you've done, that brings a lot more meaning to your life now. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I was taught to be independent. I grew up as an independent woman. You need help, and when you need help, you need to ask for it. And I think one of the things, especially with the journey that I went through. When somebody else is in that situation, as a family, you also
Mm.
need to see, okay, what are the signs? Because you
Mm.
need to be very, very vigilant as far as that is concerned also. And as my sister-in-law said, we forgot about you.
That's right.
Those are the things that people have to be very mindful of. You turn into somebody that you don't know. And
Yes.
at some stage, I was so tired that I actually turned into somebody that even I didn't like,
That's right.
because you get short-tempered, you fly off the handle for no reason at
Which, by the way, is
all.
another red
You bite
flag.
at, yes,
People that are in caregiving positions, you literally
yes,
putting your life on the back burner for your dad because you had to be
yes,
there all the time for him. So, I think this is a lot of learning in that there needs to be one support, need to ask for help,
yes,
need to have a schedule
yes,
that everybody gets involved, not other caregivers. Yeah, it takes a team, it takes a village, but you have to do
yes,
it. I think people can learn from it, see maybe mirrors in it, especially teachers, especially caregivers. And I love the music part of it, and I love getting to know you better. Thank you so much for taking the time to come chat. And yeah, I wish you all the best.
yeah. Thank you very, very much. I do appreciate it.
Keep well.